In the primordial darkness before creation, when the cosmic waters of none stretched endlessly across the void, a consciousness stirred that would become known to mortals as Anubis, the guardian of thresholds, the weigher of hearts, the guide between worlds. This ancient deity emerged not from the whims of human imagination, but from the fundamental forces that govern the transition between life and death, between the known and the unknowable, between the material realm and the infinite expanse of spirit. The earliest records carved into stone tablets predating the Great Pyramids by millennia speak of Anubis as the first consciousness to master the art of transformation. When the primordial gods were still learning to shape matter from thought, Anubis had already discovered the sacred mathematics that govern the dissolution of form and its reconstitution in higher dimensions. The jackal-headed god understood what modern quantum physics has only recently begun to glimpse: that consciousness itself is the fundamental force that shapes reality, and that death is merely another word for the ultimate creative act. Ancient initiates who served in the temples of Anubis learned that the god's jackal form was not arbitrary symbolism, but a profound teaching about the nature of consciousness itself. The jackal, a creature that thrives in the liminal spaces between civilization and wilderness, between day and night, represents the aspect of awareness that can navigate the borderlands of existence. Just as the physical jackal possesses the unique ability to digest what other creatures cannot, Anubis embodies the consciousness that can transform the raw experiences of mortal life into the refined wisdom of eternal understanding. The sacred texts hidden within the deepest chambers of the Valley of the Kings reveal that Anubis was present at the moment of creation itself, serving as the cosmic midwife who assisted in the birth of the physical universe from the womb of infinite potential. When the first word of power was spoken and light separated from darkness, Anubis was there to ensure that the boundary between being and non-being remained permeable, that the door between worlds would never be permanently sealed. This role as the eternal guardian of transitions explains why Anubis became so intimately associated with the process of death and rebirth. The ancient Egyptians understood that physical death was merely the most dramatic example of the countless transformations that consciousness undergoes throughout its eternal journey. Every moment of genuine spiritual growth, every breakthrough in understanding, every leap of creative insight represents a kind of death, the dissolution of old patterns of thought and perception to make way for expanded awareness. The priests who dedicated their lives to serving Anubis discovered that the god possessed knowledge of transformation techniques that could be applied not only to the dying, but to the living as well. These sacred practices, encoded in hieroglyphs that required decades of study to decipher, revealed how conscious beings could voluntarily undergo the process of ego death and spiritual rebirth while still inhabiting physical form. Through specific rituals, meditations, and energy practices, initiates learned to dissolve the boundaries of ordinary consciousness and access the vast reservoir of cosmic wisdom that Anubis guards. The most profound of these teachings concerned the nature of the heart, not the physical organ, but the spiritual center that the Egyptians understood as the seat of consciousness itself. Anubis revealed to his priests that the heart contains within its energetic structure a complete record of every thought, emotion, and action that a being has ever experienced across all lifetimes. This Akashic record, encoded in the very fabric of the heart's electromagnetic field, serves as the basis for the famous weighing ceremony that determines the soul's readiness for higher dimensions of existence. The feather of Ma'at against which every heart is weighed represents far more than simple moral judgment. It symbolizes the state of perfect balance that consciousness achieves when it has learned to navigate the polarities of existence without becoming trapped in either extreme. The feather's lightness indicates not the absence of experience, but the presence of wisdom, the ability to hold all of life's contradictions in perfect equilibrium, neither rejecting the darkness nor clinging to the light. Anubis taught his initiates that this state of perfect balance could be achieved through the practice of conscious dying, learning to release attachment to outcomes' identities and even to life itself, while remaining fully present and engaged with the moment. This paradoxical teaching forms the core of all genuine spiritual practice, to live with such intensity and presence that one becomes simultaneously willing to die at any moment, not from despair or nihilism, but from the recognition that consciousness itself is indestructible, and that physical form is merely one of its temporary expressions. The god's role as psychopomp, the guide who escorts souls through the afterlife realms, reveals another crucial aspect of his nature. Anubis possesses the unique ability to perceive the true essence of consciousness beneath all its temporary disguises and manifestations. Where human perception sees only the surface personality with its fears, desires, and limitations, Anubis perceives the eternal soul with its infinite potential for growth and transformation. This divine vision allows Anubis to serve as the perfect guide for souls navigating the often confusing landscape of the afterlife. The Duot, as the ancient Egyptians called the realm of the dead, is not a fixed location, but a dimension of consciousness where thoughts and beliefs take on tangible form. Souls who enter this realm often become lost in projections of their own unconscious minds, trapped in scenarios created by their unresolved fears and desires. Anubis serves as the divine navigator who helps souls recognize these mental projections for what they are, and guides them toward the clear light of pure consciousness that lies beyond all illusion. The god's perfect discernment allows him to see through the veils of Maya that obscure the soul's true nature, leading each consciousness toward the experiences it needs for continued growth and evolution. The ancient mystery schools that served Anubis developed elaborate training programs designed to prepare initiates for this role as guides and healers of consciousness. These programs, which could span decades of intensive study and practice, taught students to cultivate the same divine discernment that Anubis possesses. Through meditation ritual and direct transmission from advanced teachers, initiates learned to perceive the subtle energy patterns that reveal the true state of another being's consciousness. The most advanced practitioners developed the ability to perform what the texts call psychic surgery, the capacity to identify and dissolve the energetic blockages that prevent souls from accessing their full potential. These blockages, formed by traumatic experiences limiting beliefs, and unresolved emotional patterns create distortions in the consciousness field that can persist across multiple lifetimes. Anubis taught his priests specific techniques for locating these distortions and facilitating their release through sacred sound energy work and guided visualization. The god's association with mummification reveals another layer of his profound wisdom regarding the nature of consciousness and form. The elaborate preservation techniques developed by the ancient Egyptians were not motivated by a primitive fear of death, but by a sophisticated understanding of the relationship between consciousness and its physical vehicle. The priests of Anubis discovered that consciousness maintains certain connections to the physical body even after death, and that the condition of the corpse could influence the soul's journey through the afterlife realms. The mummification process, overseen by priests wearing the sacred mask of Anubis, was actually a complex ritual designed to facilitate the soul's complete liberation from physical attachment. Each step of the preservation process corresponded to a specific stage of consciousness evolution, from the removal of the brain, symbolizing the transcendence of rational thought, to the placement of protective amulets that would guide the soul through the challenges of the duat. The canopic jars that held the preserved organs were not merely practical containers, but sacred vessels that maintained energetic connections to different aspects of the soul's journey. The liver associated with emotion and desire was placed under the protection of Imseti, the human-headed son of Horus. The lungs connected to the breath of life and spiritual aspiration were guarded by Hapi, the baboon-headed deity. The stomach, representing the digestion of experience into wisdom, was protected by Duamutef, the jackal-headed god who shared Anubis's form. The intestines, symbolizing the processing and elimination of karmic residue, were watched over by Kebesenuef, the falcon-headed guardian. This elaborate system reveals the depth of understanding that the priests of Anubis possessed regarding the multidimensional nature of consciousness. They recognize that what humans call the soul is actually a complex system of interconnected energy bodies, each serving specific functions in the overall evolution of awareness. Physical death represents the dissolution of the densest of these bodies, but the more subtle aspects of consciousness continue their journey through increasingly refined dimensions of existence. The god's role as judge of the dead has been widely misunderstood by modern interpreters who project contemporary notions of moral judgment onto ancient wisdom teachings. Anubis does not condemn or punish souls based on arbitrary moral codes, but serves as a mirror that reflects back to each consciousness the true nature of its own choices and their consequences. The weighing of the heart represents a moment of perfect clarity when all self-deception falls away, and the soul sees itself exactly as it is. This divine judgment is not punitive but therapeutic, designed to help consciousness recognize the patterns that have been limiting its growth and evolution. Souls whose hearts prove heavier than the feather of Ma'at are not condemned to eternal damnation, but are guided toward experiences that will help them develop the wisdom and compassion necessary for continued spiritual advancement. Even the dreaded Amit, the crocodile-headed devourer of hearts, serves not as an agent of destruction, but as a force of transformation that breaks down the ego structures that prevent the soul from accessing its true nature. The most esoteric teachings of the Anubis tradition reveal that the god himself represents a state of consciousness that every being is destined to achieve. The jackal-headed deity is not an external entity to be worshipped, but an aspect of the divine self that lies dormant within every soul. Through dedicated spiritual practice and the cultivation of wisdom, individuals can awaken this inner Anubis and gain access to the same powers of discernment and transformation that the god embodies. This process of awakening the inner Anubis begins with the recognition that consciousness itself is the fundamental reality underlying all apparent phenomena. The physical world, with all its seeming solidity and permanence, is revealed to be a temporary crystallization of awareness, no more substantial than a dream that dissolves upon awakening. This recognition does not lead to nihilism or withdrawal from life, but to a profound appreciation for the creative power of consciousness and the responsibility that comes with wielding that power. The awakened individual learns to navigate the world with the same perfect balance that Anubis demonstrates, neither rejecting the material realm nor becoming trapped within its limitations. They develop the capacity to see through the surface appearances of situations and people, to perceive the deeper patterns of growth and evolution that are always at work. Like Anubis, they become guides and healers, helping others recognize their own divine nature and supporting them through the inevitable transformations that spiritual growth requires. The ancient texts speak of certain individuals who achieved such complete identification with the Anubis consciousness that they transcended the normal limitations of human existence. These beings, known as the living Ankhs, possessed the ability to move freely between dimensions of reality, serving as bridges between the world of form and the realm of pure spirit. They could appear simultaneously in multiple locations, communicate directly with discarnate beings, and facilitate healing and transformation through their mere presence. These legendary beings served as living embodiments of Anubis's teachings, demonstrating through their very existence that the boundaries between life and death, between human and divine, are far more fluid than ordinary consciousness perceives. They walked among mortals as teachers and healers, their presence alone sufficient to catalyze profound transformations in those ready to receive their wisdom. The sacred knowledge of Anubis also teaches that the journey through death and rebirth is mirrored in the cycles of nature and the cosmos. The phases of the moon, the turning of the seasons, and the rising and setting of the sun all reflect the eternal rhythm of transformation that the god oversees. By aligning their lives with these natural cycles, initiates learn to move in harmony with the universe, embracing change as a vital and sacred process. The god's presence is felt most strongly during the twilight hours, the liminal time between day and night, when the veil between worlds is thinnest. It is during these moments that the soul is most receptive to guidance and revelation, and the prayers to Anubis carry the greatest power. The ancient priests discovered that consciousness itself undergoes subtle shifts during these transitional periods, becoming more malleable and open to transformation. In the mysteries of the afterlife, Anubis is often depicted as a compassionate guide, leading souls through the labyrinthine paths of the Duat with patience and wisdom. The god's role is not to judge, but to assist, ensuring that each soul finds its rightful place in the cosmic order. This guidance extends beyond mere navigation of the afterlife realms to encompass the deeper work of helping consciousness recognize its own infinite nature. The ancient texts describe how Anubis uses his keen senses to detect the subtle vibrations of truth and falsehood, helping souls to confront their own illusions and attachments. This process is essential for the purification of the soul and its preparation for the next stage of existence. The god's discernment operates not through harsh judgment, but through the gentle revelation of what is real and what is merely projection. The god's association with the scales of Ma'at symbolizes the delicate balance that must be maintained for harmony to prevail. This balance extends beyond the individual to encompass the entire cosmos, reflecting the interconnectedness of all life. The feather of Ma'at represents not moral perfection, but the state of equilibrium that allows consciousness to flow freely between all possible states of being. Anubis's teachings also emphasize the importance of compassion and forgiveness in the journey of transformation. The god encourages initiates to release resentment and judgment, recognizing that these emotions bind the soul to suffering and prevent its liberation. Through the practice of radical acceptance, souls learn to embrace even their darkest experiences as necessary catalysts for growth and awakening. Through rituals and meditations, followers of Anubis cultivate a heart-centered awareness that opens the way for healing and renewal. This practice fosters a deep sense of peace and acceptance, allowing the soul to move freely through the cycles of change. The heart becomes a sacred vessel, capable of holding the full spectrum of human experience without being overwhelmed or diminished by it. The god's wisdom is not confined to the realm of death, but extends to the challenges of daily life. Anubis teaches that every moment offers an opportunity for transformation, and that by embracing the unknown with courage, individuals can awaken their highest potential. The ordinary experiences of lost disappointment and uncertainty become doorways to deeper understanding and spiritual growth. The path of Anubis is one of continuous growth, inviting seekers to shed old identities and beliefs that no longer serve them. This process of shedding is likened to the jackal's shedding of its fur, a natural renewal that prepares the way for new life. Each release of outdated patterns creates space for expanded awareness and greater alignment with divine will. The ancient mysteries also reveal that Anubis holds the secret to unlocking the hidden powers of the human mind and spirit. Through dedicated practice, initiates can access states of heightened awareness and expanded consciousness, tapping into the divine wisdom that flows through all creation. These abilities are not supernatural gifts, but natural capacities that become available when consciousness is freed from its self-imposed limitations. The god's teachings inspire a profound respect for the sacredness of life and the inevitability of death, encouraging a balanced perspective that honors both. This balance allows practitioners to live fully in the present moment while maintaining awareness of the eternal nature of consciousness. They learn to hold life lightly, appreciating its beauty without clinging to its temporary forms. In this way, Anubis serves as a bridge between opposites, life and death, light and shadow form, and formlessness, guiding souls toward the realization of their true nature as eternal beings of light and love. The God embodies the principle of unity that underlies all apparent duality, revealing that what seems separate is actually one consciousness expressing itself through infinite forms. The story of Anubis, therefore, is a timeless invitation to awaken to the mysteries of existence, to embrace the transformative power of consciousness, and to walk the path of the eternal guardian with reverence and grace. This invitation extends to every being, regardless of their current level of understanding or spiritual development, for the God's compassion knows no bounds. As the ancient wisdom continues to resonate through the ages, it calls each of us to remember our own divine heritage and to step boldly into the light of our true selves. The teachings of Anubis offer not escape from the human condition, but transformation of it, revealing how ordinary life can become a sacred journey of awakening and service. The journey with Anubis is not one of fear, but of empowerment, a sacred dance that leads to the ultimate freedom and the realization of the soul's infinite potential. Through this dance, consciousness learns to move gracefully between all states of being, finding joy in both the heights of ecstasy and the depths of surrender. The culmination of Anubis's teachings reveals the ultimate secret that has been hidden within the mysteries for millennia, that consciousness itself is the divine substance from which all reality is woven. The God's final revelation to his most advanced initiates concerns the nature of what the ancient texts call the eternal now, a state of awareness that transcends the linear progression of time and allows direct participation in the creative process of the universe. In this state, the practitioner discovers that past, present, and future exist simultaneously within consciousness, and that the apparent sequence of events is merely a construct of limited perception. Anubis teaches that by learning to navigate this multidimensional awareness, souls can access the Akashic records not only of their own experiences, but of all consciousness throughout eternity. This access grants profound insights into the patterns that govern existence and the ultimate purpose behind all manifestation. The God's most sacred teaching concerns the process of conscious creation, the ability to shape reality through focused intention and aligned action. This power, which the ancient texts describe as speaking with the voice of Thoth, becomes available only to those who have mastered the art of ego dissolution and learn to operate from the perspective of universal consciousness rather than personal will. The practice of conscious creation requires perfect alignment between thought, emotion, and action, creating a coherent field of intention that reality cannot help but respond to. Anubis teaches that this alignment is achieved through the cultivation of what the mysteries call a divine indifference, a state of complete non-attachment to outcomes that paradoxically increases one's creative power exponentially. This divine indifference should not be confused with apathy or withdrawal from life. Rather, it represents the ultimate expression of trust in the wisdom of the universe and the willingness to serve as a clear channel for divine will. The practitioner learns to hold their intentions lightly, offering them to the cosmic intelligence while remaining open to manifestations that may exceed their limited imagination. The ancient texts speak of master practitioners who could materialize objects from pure thought heal incurable diseases with a touch, and even resurrect the dead through the power of their aligned consciousness. These abilities, while seemingly miraculous, are presented in the teachings as natural expressions of consciousness that has remembered its true nature and learned to operate from its unlimited potential. The God's wisdom also encompasses the understanding of what the mysteries call sacred timing, the recognition that the universe operates according to cycles and rhythms that must be honored for manifestation to occur harmoniously. Anubis teaches his initiates to perceive these cosmic rhythms and to align their actions with the natural flow of creative energy, ensuring that their efforts are supported by the fundamental forces of existence. The practice of sacred timing involves developing sensitivity to the subtle energetic shifts that precede major transformations in the material world. Advanced practitioners learn to read these signs in the movement of celestial bodies, the behavior of animals, the patterns of weather, and the fluctuations of their own consciousness. By attuning themselves to these natural indicators, they can time their actions for maximum effectiveness and minimum resistance. The God's teachings also reveal the existence of what the ancient texts call probability streams, potential futures that exist in quantum superposition until consciousness collapses them into manifest reality through observation and choice. Anubis shows his initiates how to perceive these probability streams and to consciously select those that align with their highest purpose and the greatest good of all beings. This ability to navigate probability streams requires the development of what the mysteries term prophetic consciousness, a state of awareness that can perceive the likely outcomes of current actions and choices. This gift is not about predicting a fixed future, but about understanding the dynamic relationship between consciousness and manifestation, allowing the practitioner to make choices that create the most beneficial outcomes for all involved. The ultimate teaching of Anubis concerns the nature of service and the responsibility that comes with expanded consciousness. The God reveals that all spiritual development is ultimately in service to the evolution of consciousness itself, and that those who awaken to their true nature become agents of transformation for the entire universe. This service is not a burden but a joy, representing the natural expression of love that flows from the recognition of unity. The awakened practitioner learns to see every interaction as an opportunity to serve the highest good, whether through direct teaching, healing, or simply by maintaining a high vibration that uplifts all those they encounter. This service requires no special qualifications or formal recognition. It is the spontaneous expression of consciousness that has remembered its divine nature and chooses to share that remembrance with others. The God's final revelation concerns the nature of what the mysteries call the Great Work, the ongoing process of consciousness evolution that encompasses not only individual awakening, but the transformation of the entire cosmos. Anubis teaches that every soul is both a participant in and a co-creator of this cosmic evolution, and that the choices made by each individual consciousness affect the trajectory of universal development. This understanding brings with it a profound sense of responsibility and purpose, as the practitioner realizes that their personal transformation is not separate from the healing of the world, but is an integral part of it. The work of awakening consciousness becomes a sacred mission that extends far beyond personal liberation to encompass the elevation of all life. The story of Anubis, therefore, is not merely the tale of an ancient deity, but a living transmission of wisdom that continues to guide souls toward their ultimate destiny. The God's teachings offer a complete path of transformation that addresses every aspect of existence, from the most practical concerns of daily life to the most sublime mysteries of cosmic consciousness. Those who choose to walk this path discover that they are not alone in their journey, but are supported by an invisible network of awakened beings who have traveled this road before them. Anubis himself serves as the eternal guide and protector, ensuring that no sincere seeker is ever abandoned or left to struggle without assistance. The invitation of Anubis extends to every soul regardless of their current circumstances or level of understanding. The God's compassion knows no bounds, and his wisdom is available to all who approach with sincerity and an open heart. The only requirement is the willingness to embrace transformation and to trust in the process of awakening, even when the path leads through the darkness of the unknown. In accepting this invitation, the seeker embarks upon the greatest adventure possible, the journey home to their own divine nature and the realization of their infinite potential as conscious co-creators of reality itself.